Alrighty, so youth voices and climate change. So, like Julie said, I am Dionna Brown. I'm a second-year master's student at Wayne State University, and I'm the National Director of the Youth Environmental Justice Programs at Black Millennials for Flint. So, just a little agenda today. I like to be organized a little bit. So, we're going to talk about my background, Black Millennials for Flint, my advocacy work, my research, and then any questions you guys may have. So, my background. So these pictures are of me, one from birth, the top corner, well, the top third picture, me, my father, and my older sister, and just pictures of my friends and family. I like to say I'm really grounded within my friends and family. They keep me motivated and they keep me humble. And without them, I would not be the person or the woman I am today, especially my mom and my grandmother. Um, and I'll talk a little bit more about my grandmother a little later. But yeah, I love my friends, I love my family, and my mom is honestly the best person ever. So all about me. I was born May 3rd, 1999. I'm a 90s baby, just made the cutoff. I was born in Flint, Michigan. I attended Grand Lake High School and I graduated there in 2017 in Grand Lake, Michigan, which is about 20 minutes away from Flint. I attended Howard University, and I graduated in 2021 with my bachelor's in sociology, and I minored in Afro-American studies. I was actually a double major, did not know, and I thought about doing both, but I just decided to do Afro as my minor. Fun fact, I am fluent in Chinese. A lot of people don't know that. That was my foreign language in high school, and I continued to do it in college. And I was accepted to go to Taiwan in 2020, but that did not happen because it was 2020. I am at Wayne State University, and I am class of 2024. I graduate in May. I'm so excited with my master's in sociology. And I took a gap year between grad school and undergrad just because I did not know what I wanted to do with my life. I was having a quarter life crisis, as I like to call it, even though I was only 22. But now I kind of have a sense of what I want to do. And that is being an environmental justice lawyer. My interests are race, gender, climate and environmental justice, social justice, anything having to do with justice. That is my forte. And that's one of my favorite graduation pictures. My shirt says "Made in Flint" because I just had this conversation with someone the other day. They asked me where I was from. I said Flint, and then they asked me what school I went to, and I said, "Oh, I graduated from Grand Blanc." And then they said, "Oh, I expected you to say some Flint school." I'm like, my address always said Flint, so I am from Flint. Always lived in Flint. So how did I get involved in EJ? So this picture on the left is a picture of my grandmother, my mother, my uncle, and my two aunts. So in 2020, I unexpectedly lost my grandmother. Um, this was during the time we got sent home from school. So I was back home in a four-generation household, and I was taking care of my grandmother and my great grandmother because my grandmother took care of her mother. And she got sick, and she passed away the day I needed to sign up for classes for my senior year. So, she passed away, and I asked one of my friends to sign me up for classes. I have all of my class registration numbers written down, and I told her, "Hey," well, I asked in our group chat, "Can someone sign me up after you guys do your classes?" And one of my friends responded and said they could. And I also told her if one of my classes that I chose for sociology was not available, sign me up for a random class. And the class that I wanted, sociology of poverty, was not available. So she signed me up for environmental inequalities. And I read the description of the class and I decided to stick with it. It was my last year, and I only needed like 30 more credits, not even a full 30 credits. So I'm just like, I just want fun, easy classes that I can do to finish out my degree because I was ready to graduate. So that class changed my perspective and my career goals. So in that class taught by Dr. Michelle Doval, who is pictured on the right. I finally met her in person in October at the HBCU Climate Change Conference. And I just told him, you don't understand how much you changed my life 3 years ago. And I was finally able to thank her in person. Meeting her online, it was a great time. She's an amazing woman, but just meeting her in person, talking to her about what I wanted to do and how she changed my life was just so inspiring to me. And she always talked about the HBCU Climate Change Conference because that's how she got her start in the environmental justice and climate justice movement. So meeting her in 2020 virtually changed my life. She made me think about environmental rights as civil rights. I said I'm going to be a civil rights attorney, but that changed into an environmental rights and now environmental justice attorney because of her. And I was able to thank her. She's also a sociologist like myself, and she's an amazing professor at Howard, still teaching environmental inequalities. So I'm gonna move on to a little bit about Black Millennials for Flint. So Black Millennials for Flint was birthed out of the trauma of the Flint water crisis, which started as a call to action for Black millennials to come together to fight for our Flint sisters and brothers. Mind you, I'm not a millennial, I am Gen Z. I am the youngest person at our organization, but it's all good. We love millennials over here. And from that, we learned that the infrastructure of Black liberation requires diversity in the approach. So you need the elected seat, you need the power broker, you need the financial steward, the community advocate, and the agitator. And you have to realize which one you are at a very, not at an early point, but early on so you can become a better person. So Black Millennials for Flint is a grassroots environmental justice and civil rights organization with the purpose of bringing like-minded organizations together to collectively take action and advocate against the crisis of lead exposure, specifically in African American and Latinx communities throughout the nation. Our roots began as a program initiative with the Thursday Network, Greater Washington Urban League professionals, led by Latricia Adams, founder, CEO, and president. Black Millennials for Flint is the first and only African American and Latinx millennial environmental justice and civil rights organization in American history. As a collective group of Black millennials, we grew into an official movement on February 10th, 2016. And our mission is to empower communities to take action and advocate against the crisis of lead exposure, specifically in African American and Latinx communities. And our vision is to envision a nation where community leaders unite to seek environmental justice for lead-free African American and Latinx communities. And our 4-action plan is to raise funds and cultivate resources to improve quality of life of communities impacted by lead exposure, advocate for the eradication of lead in air, consumer products, house, and soil. Advocate for the eradication of lead in air, consumer products, house, soil, and water. Educate and equip the general public with digestible information regarding lead and lead exposure, and build coalitions with like-minded organizations. So who do we work with? We work with public health organizations like the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, the Revive Community Center in Flint, Michigan, and the American Public Health Association. The big grants that we work with are the Environmental Defense Fund, Climate Action Campaign, Union of Concerned Scientists, Earth Justice, and Climate Power. The schools, so we have an adopted school. We have 3 adopted schools in Flint, Michigan, but the main one that we do work with is Eagle Nest Academy on the north side of Flint, the University of Michigan Flint, and Mount Community College, which is a community college in Flint. And the government agencies that we work with are the EPA, the Executive Office of the President of the United States. Our founder, CEO, and President, Latricia, is a WEJAC member. And we also work with the United States of America Department of Health. So a couple of programs that we do, one is called Shop Talk. This is ran by our National Director of Male Initiatives, Dr. Carlton Poindexter. And Shop Talks bring brings environmental justice content to the barbershop, a sacred place for Black brotherhood where some of the most intimate and life-changing conversations occur. Black Millennials for Flint partners with Black national climate and EJ experts and organizations to create progressive educational models to deliver practical and actionable environmental justice content. And we also have the EJ Griot and Land Ambassador Program. So this award-winning and nationally recognized rites of passage leadership program is designed for African Americans and Latinx millennials and Gen Z college students, young professionals, community leaders, and parents. The program builds millennials and Gen Z's leaders' capacity to become advocates for the eradication of lead and environmental justice through political advocacy, activism, and organizing. Our core training model includes analyze and draft recommendations for local legislation, use social media to garner public support of recommendations for local legislation, networking and coalition building with like-minded organizations and community leaders, attend public meetings to testify before elected officials, community engagement and outreach, and fundraising and fund development. Now, this is the fun part for me. This is my programming, part of my programming, the Young Gifted and Green Summer Camp. And this is where I teach the youth of Flint and in the surrounding areas of Genesee County about environmental justice and the intersection of public health. So this year, our theme was violence. The public health side of things ran by the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, talked about gun violence, and we talked about environmental violence and how violent environmental justice issues can be to Black, Brown, and low-income communities. So we had a youth roundtable with the interim president of Michigan State University, President Woodruff, and this was a fun and televised event. I reached out to my contact at ABC 12, and I went to elementary with her, and I asked her, could she cover this important topic? Gun violence is a very huge issue in Flint and then in our schools. So it was really nice to see the kids talk to the president of Michigan State after they had a gun violence issue on campus earlier this year in February. The second picture is a review day. The chief advocacy officer, she is reviewing EJ lessons from the camp, getting them prepared to take the final, not exam, but a post-test to see if they learned anything from the camp. We also incorporated yoga throughout the day just to keep the kids energized and just rejuvenated and just grounded in themselves. And one of my favorite lessons of the camp was the beauty justice or hygiene justice lesson. The youth learned about safe chemicals for their hygiene products, and we brought in a local business owner who has her own shop where she makes her own shea butters, candles, anything that you can think of. And with the camp, they learned about the 17 principles of environmental justice, gentrification, redlining, public policy and mapping, lead poisoning, its effects, prevention, citizen science, and water quality. They learned about sustainability, climate change, and natural disasters. And that's my favorite thing to teach them about is climate change. They have the most questions about climate change and why it is happening and why the government isn't doing anything about it, which really warmed my heart. I'm like, yes, I'm getting through to you guys. I'm training the next generation of activists. And then beauty justice as well. So the second part of my programming is hosting the Youth Environmental Justice Council. So we have three youth from Flint in the surrounding areas. So we have a senior in college, Kayla Shannon. She's at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. You have Isaiah Grace. He's a senior in high school, and Nevaeh Dixon, and she is 13. I'm sorry, she just turned 14, and she's an 8th grader at Eagles Nest Academy, our adopted school. And with the Youth EJ Council, they're able to come with me on different events if I'm traveling to present either our research or my research. They're just there to observe and just to network with other like-minded individuals. So in the second picture, we are meeting with Dr. DeJarrett from the White House Environmental Council on Environmental Quality, the CEQ, and we're talking about the climate and economic justice screening tool. Sorry, CJUST, but I want to make sure you guys know what CJUST is, and we're giving our recommendations on how to make the CJUST tool better. And we're actually going to be presenting that research at a conference next month. So I'm really excited about that, getting the youth involved in that type of project, and then be able to say the recommendations to the person who created the tool, which was really cool. And then in the last picture, Isaiah and Avea came with me to the American Public Health Association Policy Action Institute in June in Washington, D.C., and they were able to network with so many different people, and I was just really proud of them, talking to different people and just telling their stories about Flint and what they love about Flint and what they want better for Flint and just the country when it comes to public health and the policy behind it. So some of our accomplishments at Black Millennials for Flint with Gen Z and Millennials. So we completed 26 collective Hill visits. We successfully hosted an EJ Flint City Council candidate debate, supported community organizing and youth representation with the Flint water crisis settlement, made federal regulatory public comment on mercury air toxins, Millennial and Gen Z org, first Millennial and Gen Z org to release recommendations to the Environmental Justice for All Act, made executive branch recommendations, including race, birth outcome, and gender-based indicators in the climate environmental justice screening tool, developed a Flint Green New Deal presented to the Michigan State Legislature, and successfully advocated for mandatory testing for lead in school drinking water with this Michigan State Senate, and that recently just passed last month. Oh, going back to that. Can I go back? The picture in the left corner, I'm in the picture, you probably can't see me. Ashley's hands arm is in the way, but that is a picture of us from the Congressional Black Caucus Week. We had a reception with our Michigan senators and representatives, and Ashley was also a 40 under 40 awardee, and Jada, who is in the pinkish sweater, she was a Flint griot, and the person behind me, she kind of has like, it's like stripes on her shirt. Can't really see her either. Amari, she's also a Flint griot, and that is our Senator Debbie Stabenow. I'm so sad she's retiring, but you know, life goes on. So just a little bit about my advocacy work. So I was first interviewed by NBC News in 2021, and why on the settlement for the Flint water crisis, and how the settlement was not enough. You could never put a price tag on people's lives and people who are still losing family members because of the effects of the water crisis. The next time I was interviewed, we were at Essence Fest in New Orleans, and a guy just randomly came up to me and asked me what we were doing while we were at Essence, and I told him about Black Millennials for Flint, and he wanted to interview me, and that's why I look like that in that picture. I was not ready for the picture, but just highlighting the work that we were doing and making sure that people knew the risk of lead exposure in their homes and how it comes about and what they can do to prevent it was really just exciting, and I loved being at Essence. In 2022, so last year, I was one of the people on like a panel, I will say, just about Genesee elected officials advocates for how a new round of clean air car standards, and just how I spoke about air pollution and how the Black community is 10 times more likely to die from asthma than the non-Hispanic white community, and just the problem of air pollution and childhood asthma and even adulthood asthma in Michigan is a huge problem because of the factories and the industry we have in Michigan being an industrial state. And this is probably my favorite article. My professor, my advanced social science professor, so I told him that I got accepted to this cohort called Young Climate Leaders of Color, and it's a California-based group. It's about 30 of us who got accepted, and it's basically a fellowship. We got paid to do it, and we just wrapped up our last programming of the year. And I also told him I got invited by the White House to attend the VP's address at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And he was like, wait, we need to highlight this. So he sent my information to one of the people who worked on the graduate newspaper, and she reached out to me, wanted to interview me. And I just remember doing the interview. I felt really good just talking about my story and just how I just wanted to be just what I wanted to be in life and what I want for the future. And she was just really nice. And yeah, from this, I've gotten so many different opportunities at Wayne State. So I was able to speak to a class ran by graduate students called the TRES. I cannot remember what the acronym TRES stands for, but it has to do with sustainability. And they wanted me to talk about climate change and sustainability and advocacy and how they become an advocate for their community. So it was really cool. I talked to like sophomores. I'm like, okay, you guys are my brother's age. And so the next time not the next time, but this is the next article that was written about me. Is the People's Climate Innovation Center. So that is who funds the Young Climate Leaders of Color cohort. And I basically just told them what I was up to since the last time we all talked to each other. And I did a lot winter semester 2023, from going to the VP's address to advocating on the Hill with Climate Action Campaign to going to Power Shift conference in New Orleans. I testified in front of the EPA about the mercury air toxin standards. That's all I can think of right now off the top of my head. I do a lot. So it was just really nice for them to highlight the work I was doing to our cohort and then to anyone who comes to the page. And this is probably my favorite award I've ever gotten in my life. So I was selected to be a Young Gifted and Green 40 Under 40 awardee. And this is by my organization. However, they will not tell me who nominated me. So I don't know if my friends or my family or they nominated me, but I love that my hard work does not go unnoticed with my organization, with my friends or my family, and that I know I have a huge support system. So, and just being a part of the, I said 2024, I'm so sorry, that is 2023, thinking ahead. And just being a part of this, not a cohort, but just being a part of the awardees and having that that system of support with everyone who got an award this year was really special to me. And we had this event during the Congressional Black Caucus Week. And I'm also a part of a database. So I'm a part of the Environmental Experts of Color database. If you look up my name, which is, you have to look up my full name, so Dionna Latrice Brown. And yeah, and it was really cool when they reached out to me to be a part of this. I worked with Green 2.0 before. I was on a panel in April and talking about just how we can help different organizations and what we can do for grassroots organizations to get more funding and get more notoriety so we can have a just environment. I also was interviewed in May after I attended a youth roundtable discussion and this is in Science News. So the article is Flint grapples with mental health fallout from the water disaster. And I really liked my quotes. I couldn't remember everything that I said, so seeing it, so I'm like, "Oh, I said something good." So, it says, "Dionna Brown, a sociology graduate student at Wayne State University in Detroit, grew up in Flint and was a teenager during the water disaster. Brown felt like the government is trying to poison a Black city. She realized Black children, we can't have a childhood. We have to grow up fast." And I also said, "We're a loving city," Deanna Brown says, "and we're going to be okay." And during I recall some of the interview just talking about how it was growing up in Flint, losing a couple of friends before, I even graduated high school, or people I knew from the neighborhood, and just seeing the different paths that we all took. It just made me appreciate my parents a little bit more for being so hard on me and pulling me out of Flint school so I can be the person I am today. From going to Grand Blanc, I hated it, but I needed to go there to be in the space I am today. And this is the latest interview. Um, and I was interviewed by Prism magazine. And this one was Flint Searches for Environmental Justice 10 years after the water crisis. And this one really dove deep into how I was affected by the water crisis. So losing my grandmother and not being there all the way cognitively just from being poisoned. It was really intimate and I was really vulnerable, but I'm happy I got my story out there. And I really appreciated this part of the article, so I'm going to read it for you guys. That would mean the people in power would sit down with the people in the community and hear what those harmed need to move forward with their lives. The government would then provide extended public resources, even if it meant lifetime support. This reimagining of the justice system will take the work of succeeding era of emerging policymakers and lawyers such as Brown. Like many in her generation who grew up with environmental injustices, they are now facing more consequences they didn't create. Water crisis continue to unfold in other cities, and this time the climate crisis is layered onto it. As a leader in climate justice, Brown is motivated to be a part of systemic change because she knows communities like Flint will be repeatedly on the front lines. I do believe the system is working as it is intended to work, and it's benefiting the people that it's supposed to benefit, Brown said. We need to dismantle the system and build a new one so it can be equitable for everyone. And also during this interview, I really talked about divine timing and just I'm not that much of a religious person, but I believe losing my grandma was a was was deeper than, okay, yes, I'm sad I lost my grandmother, but I want to be the person I am today without losing her. It forced me to be uncomfortable. It forced me to get into this movement because I know it is other people out there like me, other children, other youth like me who's been affected their whole life, and people aren't listening to them or their community. And I love that I'm a voice for my community and for my generation. And also I write blogs for our blog, which is called Catch the Tea. So any event or conference they sponsor me to go to, I have to write a blog. um and I try to write it right after I come back from the event, but that does not happen. I'm tired. I'm still in school. But I went to Power Shift Convergence in New Orleans in April. I also wrote about the future of Flint youth EJ leaders. So it's just talking about the youth council and the summer camp, and I also got quotes from the youth council about how they felt in the summer camp because they were like our mentors in the camp. And also, I didn't write this one, but I'm heavily featured in it in my words. So the Environmental Protection Agency public comment, they had an event in Flint and it was not well. It was about the Racer Buick City project, and they want to just bring more industrial factories into the city of Flint on the north side, where Buick City, if you know anything about that, that's GM's old site. And they messed it up. And it's PFAS on the site and other contaminants they need to get rid of before they can even finish it. But they decided to go along with the project, even though a lot of people in the community objected to it. So yeah. Now to the fun part, my research in climate change. So I'm gonna give you guys the condensed version. I don't want to bore you guys because this is a part of my thesis, but my thesis work came out of my advanced social stats class. So Dr. Morella again told me that my syntax, so we had to use SPSS, and I wasn't the greatest at using SPSS, but he forced me, well, taking the classes I have to take, it forced me to learn it, and I love it. I love using it, and I love statistics. So just that he told me that my syntax looked great, and I can use the research that I wrote in my syntax to build upon it for my thesis. So that's what I'm doing. So I'd like to call it Understanding Public Attitudes on Government Action Amidst the Climate Crisis. So just a brief overview of climate change, because I know we all know what it is, but climate change refers to the long-term changes in temperatures and rainfall. The concept emerged in the 19th century, and evidence for human-induced warming started in the 1960s. Greenhouse gas emissions, mainly from human activities, are the primary cause. Effects on climate change: rising sea levels, melting glaciers, more intense and frequent storms, warming oceans, and everything else that goes with it. So addressing climate change, what we can do is start holding corporations and governments accountable. Corporations are the biggest cause of climate change, and they have gone without repercussions for too long, and that needs to change if we're going to try to reverse any effects of climate change. We need to trust scientific research. I'm not going to say any more about that. And recognizing the disproportionate impact on marginalized communities, especially Black, brown, and low income communities. I like to always say that we are at the forefront for the climate crisis. We are the first affected. So if nothing is done about it, something is not going to be great. So I had 3 research questions. So one was about political party in the climate crisis. So I investigated which political party is more inclined to address the climate crisis, race and climate crisis, examining if there are racial differences in beliefs about the government's role in addressing the climate crisis, and then COVID-19 response in the climate crisis, exploring if opinions on the government's response to COVID-19 correlated with beliefs about its actions on climate change. So my hypotheses were, I believe that the Democratic Party was more likely to believe the government should be doing more about the climate crisis. Race, I believe that the Black respondents were more likely to believe the government should be doing more. And then COVID-19, I did believe there was an association perceiving the COVID-19 response as too slow and believing in the government should be doing more about climate change. So I used the American National Election Study dataset from 2020 for analysis. I used the pre-election data. And I recoded and created dummy variables for various demographics and opinion-related variables. Like I said, I'm not going to bore you guys with all the statistical things of it. So for the analysis, I used a logistic regression model to examine attitudes about government's actions on rising temperatures, and multiple models introduced to explore interaction effects between the variables. And the conclusion from my models, so reiterating the urgency of the climate crisis, especially for marginalized communities, highlighting the disparity in policy attention, and reflecting on hypotheses and their confirmation or rejection of the analysis. And the key findings were White respondents in the Democratic Party were more likely to believe the government should be doing more. Black respondents believing that the government should be doing more was not supported consistently throughout the models. And believing that the government's response to COVID-19 was too slow is consistently associated with believing more should be done about the climate change. the overall message, and overall thing I took out of the research, there is urgency in addressing the climate crisis, the importance of political and public attitudes, and the need for equitable policies to protect vulnerable communities. So, how to keep in contact with me? You can scan the QR code. That is my link tree. My LinkedIn is on there, and all the articles that I mentioned, and some other articles I did not mention featuring me are on there, in different events that I've talked at. So, my testimony in front of the EPA is on there. You just have to skip. I have the exact timing on there. And like I said, just different events that I've done, and the recordings from it. And thank you. And that is my work email. On my link tree is my personal email. So if you ever want to collaborate, could always just talk. And yeah, thank you.